everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Kyra and I am here today with a tarot tag I created. What? Ah, excitement. I'm so excited. Okay, I have no clue how long this is going to be, so we're going to dive right in. And I thought it would be fun to tell you how I came up with this. And my tarot tag is 12 decks for 12 houses. And that's a deck, tarot oracle, take your pick, for each house in your astrology. Now don't worry, I'm gonna explain it, and I've written up questions based on the house's astrological themes for you to work off of, so don't worry. But that's the premise. And I was sitting down, it's April 16th as I'm filming this, and today's the Libra full moon where I live. So I was sitting down to do like my full moon reading, and I was like, okay, I want to do my Libra full moon reading. And in my chart, Libra is my 4th house. And so I was like, okay, the 4th house is roots and ideas of roots and ancestry and home life, like your physical home. So, okay, I'm going to use this deck. And that's how I got this idea. I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is how I'm going to use decks. I'm going to, like, based on what house is going on for the full moon, because the premise is where the full moon is specifically in your chart really specifies what energy is coming up and what things you can work on and such. So that's how this idea was born. And we're going to dive in. Everyone has the same 12 houses in their chart, and they just line up differently depending on your rising sign. Oh God, that's good. And so I've got 12 decks piled in various piles before me. And we're going to dive into it. Now, before we get into it, just a quick note. I've got all the questions. They're in the description box. You can check them out there. And this is what deck do you use, or what deck would you use or could you use? It's about exploring your collection in a new way and sharing that. And I'm very excited. So first up, house 1. What deck do you use to explore your self-identity issues? And for me, that's my Luna Soul Tarot. The reason I picked this is because first, it is a sun moon, very balanced, very dualistic deck. Duality is built right into it in its images and in its name, which that's built into my chart. And it's a very important thing because not only does the first house have your identity, the sun represents your identity, and my sun is in opposition to my moon. So there's this specific opposition energy is baked into my chart. Sun versus the moon. One of my favorite temperance cards. And I also have major identity issues, hence changing my name and other things. So when I am having trouble with my identity and I'm trying to figure out how I'm presenting to the world versus how I want to be seen in my day-to-day life, I need something that's clear and that's easy to read. And that was the first criteria for picking the Luna Soul. And then the rest is that I specifically bought this deck to work with this kind of issue. This deck represents that balance and difficulty I feel in my identity and the way I'm learning and growing through working with tarot with my astrology, which this is a service I provide. If you want to learn more and work more with tarot using your specific astrology, or you want readings like full moon, new moon readings based on your specific astrology, that's what I do. Links in the description. Hit me up. If you don't see a specific reading, just send me a message or just pick like the intuitive reading and we can go from there. But hit me up. I've got an email in the description and my Calendly. So this is the deck I use for exploring my identity for myself. It's clear to read. It's super easy to work with. and it just feels clear and clean and easy, which is important for me because I struggle so much with my identity. House 2. What deck do you use to look at questions about your personal resources? And these are your resources, both tangible and intangible. So this would be, could be your finances. It could be your energy levels. It's your personal resources. And for something so broad as that, and for something that could get so sticky as like finances and shit, I can't pick anything else but the This Might Hurt tarot. I picked this because, again, similarly to the Luna Soul, this is an area in my life where I would need a clear and clean read. It needs to be easy. It needs to flow. And this deck is extremely flowy to me. I also picked it because this deck, as I talked about in my classics, I believe it was, which I will link up above in the cards, this deck very much reflects the world we live in. Occasionally you'll get a card like this, but most of these cards are very modernized and put to be in the world we live in. So if I'm looking at real world, and I don't mean not real world, if I'm looking at physical world issues of my resources, like my energy and my money, I want something that reflects the world I live in and that is clean and easy to read, because this is, like I talked about in my depthier video, which is up above and in the description. I'm going to try and add my links in the description too. I need it to be clean and easy, especially if I'm reading for myself. Because you can also use this, you can also pick your decks based on how you would read for others. I just specifically worded the questions in a way so that way people who don't read for others could still hopefully feel like they can participate in this. But so that's the This Might Hurt tarot. By the way, I could have picked this for like every single question. Just saying. That's why this is a classic. Same with my Star Seeker tarot. I could have used it. There are certain decks I have that I could have used for every single one. But that's not the game we're playing here. We're playing pick one for each house. So, house 2. House 3 is all about your communication and ideas. It can also be about siblings, but we're focusing this on each individual person. So, what deck do you use to work on personal communication issues? This one was hard. Oof. But in the end, I picked my Marielle first edition. And I picked it because I have trouble understanding my brain and understanding the way I think and the way I want to communicate. It's really like opening my mouth and letting words spill out of it. That's easy. Saying what I mean and not having incongruent communication is not easy. And understanding what I'm trying to communicate is really not easy. So I ended up picking the Marielle because there have been times when I'm trying to communicate and trying to talk out life things. There have been several times since getting this deck where I'm trying to think through and communicate an issue. There's an issue and I'm having trouble thinking it through and I'm having trouble communicating it. And that's when I pull this deck. So it seemed the best choice for now to look at this third house. So there's that one. Isn't that interesting? Ho, 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 ho. Don't know what's wrong with me. I'm a weirdo. Anywho, number 4. House 4, the House of Roots and Home and Ancestry. And this is the deck that started it all because today's Libra Moon is my 4th house. So the question is, what deck do you use for root work? And that can be whatever root work means to you. This is, for me, Ancestry is also here. So I do have another deck that I use in this area. But this is talking specifically just general root work. If I wanted to work with my root chakra, if I wanted to work with ancestry, if I really wanted to connect with the earth I live in, the way I want to root down into life. And that's my Brady Tarot, which, if I haven't talked about it on here, I can't remember if I have, my spouse gave me. I gave this to my spouse years ago, and she doesn't do tarot really, so she gave it to me. And this is what started it all. I was sitting there to do my Libra full moon reading, and I'm like, okay, my Libra moon is in my 4th house of roots and home, like physical home and ancestry. So, and I was like, okay, I'll use the Brady Tarot for this. And then I was like, oh, I'm a genius. I need to do a tarot tag about the 12 decks for 12 houses. And this one, it seems an obvious choice to me. If I'm going to be looking at things where I'm rooting down, I want an earthy deck. I want that space to feel as earthy as roots are. Now, some people may not root in as earthy ways, but the idea of the place where you root down your physical home, it's very earthy. So I want a super earthy deck that, again, represents the world we live in, but it's not just... In this, I don't want to see the natural... I don't want to see the world that humans have created that we live in, because fuck humans, we suck a lot. So I don't want to see that represented here. I want to see the natural world we live in, because that's the world I want to root in. I also could have picked my Cosmovisions for this. Look at that. Because I use my Cosmovisions to connect to my ancestors. I also could have picked my Witch's Wisdom. This is an area where it turns out I do a lot of work and want to do a lot more work. So, Brady Tarot. Thank you, Brady Tarot. Mwah! I love it, by the way. I've used it quite a lot for having just gotten it. Number 5. House 5 brings us to, what deck do you use to explore pleasure or joy? Alternately, you could also wonder, what deck do you use to enliven your inner childlike joy? This deck is currently, I have to tell you, is purely by theory. I have not actually really used this deck since I got it, which is part of why I'm doing a depth year. Dramatic tea sipping. And this is my Playful Heart Tarot. But I got this deck specifically for inner child work. And the 5th house is all about joy and pleasure. And it's also a house of children. So it's the things that bring you joy and your inner child and that childlike joy. Those things that are not all child themed joy. You can go into the sexy times here. In which case I might lean towards like something like the Marielle. But it's all about joy and pleasure and fun and children, because like if you think about children are operated that they just run around, all they want is fun all the time. That's that energy of the 5th house. And so my Playful Heart Tarot, like I've said, this is in theory. I bought this deck specifically to do inner child work. I have yet to do inner child work. I haven't really wanted to. I like having this, and I'm going to use it when there is a Leo new moon in a couple months. And now that I know this concept in my head of like use the decks for the areas of my life, I think I'll probably start using this a lot more. And this is one of the decks I'm not willing to give it up. It's too fucking ridiculous. It has one of my favorite 10 of Swords. So this one's hard to hold because it's all slippy. There we go. I figured it out. Like, look at the emotion there. So if I want to enliven my inner childlike joy, if I want to activate that inner child, if I want to look at topics of pleasure and just that pure joy that you get, I want to use this deck. I do plan to revisit and redo this tag in a couple months, or in a year, to see how it's grown and developed, and how I've done with the areas that I haven't actually used yet, but I think I'm going to. I'm just looking for my Ten of Swords because I have to show you the Ten of Swords. There you are. Come on. This is like, this and the Ten of Swords from the Brady Tarot are tied for my favorite Ten of Swords ever. So yeah, I'm going to revisit this tag at least once, probably more periodically than that, because I'm weird, but I'm super excited, and I so hope, please do this, please respond. I'm so excited to hear people talk about this. Like, you have no idea. Anywho, that's my playful heart. Number 6, house 6, the house of physical health, day-to-day routine. This one was hard. And again, this one is theory, and it's, what deck do you use to ask about physical health? I honestly don't do a lot of asking about my physical health in those strict 6th house kind of terms. I think it could be useful for me. And so when I was thinking about it, this was really hard. And I was like, okay, I need something utility. I need something that I could pull a lot of, it's just clean and crisp, similar to like the 1st and 2nd house, where I need it to be a clean, crisp reading, but more so. I need it more clean and crisp. And the best I can figure is maybe my Charmcast Tarot. Because I could pull a billion of them in, sorry, this is, I could pull so very many of them and make a very big spread, so I could do lots. I'll link my video of this because they're hard to see because they're so little. Like it's the size of my nose. But come on. Yeah. So I just picked this one because it's a utility one. I can throw it down. If I wanted, like, I feel like if I was going to do things with like my physical health, that's the type of reading that I actually go to my wife for. So when I have something that I'm really confused about, or that I'm really trying to see the big picture of, which I feel like I would read physical health the same way for myself, that's when I go to my wife and I ask her to do an oracle dice reading using her Publishing Goblins oracle dice I bought her, which she does love and use. And so I had to go for something with that kind of a utility-ness to it, because it gets you such a wide picture. So I feel like if I was going to do physical health readings, I would take some and throw them, kind of a thing. So that's the best I could figure on this. This is a theory, so we'll follow up. If you want follow-ups on any of these theories, let me know in the comments down below. House 7 is next, and this is, what deck do you use for your one-on-one relationship questions? And this one was also hard because I could pick my This Might Hurt Tarot, or like, honestly, with this one, I will pick up anything that feels right in the moment. And that the fact of the matter is, with all of these, I will just go intuitively and randomly pick something. I'll be like, oh, I'm thinking about this. What deck do I want to use? And I pick one. But if I wanted to learn, if I wanted to really figure out one-on-one relationship questions, it came down to, I need that to not be super stuck in my head, because I'm really good. I'm really, really good at getting stuck in my head. And if you watched my tarot story video, which is linked, this is an area I don't actually read for myself a lot. And it's because it's been extremely unhealthy for me. So I have to be extremely careful if I want to look at this area. But if I was trying to ask myself, like, a problem-solving kind of question of, like, why am I having trouble communicating? Nope, that's communication. If I was going to ask myself, like, what's going on? There's something and I'm not quite understanding what's going on. I need something that will really just speak to me and that won't pull punches and that will tell me off if I need to put away the deck, and will just be I need a strong, commanding deck that communicates to me. Yes, I personify my decks, and that will get a very clear message across, and that isn't too wishy-washy. It's kind of like I need a King of Swords energy kind of deck. That's what it feels like. And so it's my Dream Visions tarot, apparently. This deck, to me, this feels very airy. It's just an airy deck. Like, there's all this light and there's this just ethereal feeling, and this deck very much feels, though I don't react as strongly to it as some people do, this deck very much just hits you in a way that other decks don't. It's like these beings are ethereal beings just delivering straight messages to you. And they just don't give a shit to sugarcoat it. It just hits you. And I feel like if I was really struggling and I really needed to do some sort of a reading to look at my one-on-one relationships, I feel like this kind of energy, I think I would feel safe with it. And I would trust the messages I got to be clear and concise, and it's kind of hard to explain. So that's why I went with the Dream Visions. Plus, there is also a theme of duality in this deck, which, when you're talking one-on-one relationships, a one-on-one relationship is a living duality. It is you and your energy balancing back and forth with the person in the relationship with you. So it felt right. So that's that one. And I'm excited to give this a try when I'm struggling, when I'm having a hard time, because I think it could be really helpful. Yeah, so there's that. Which brings us to House 8. And this one was an interesting one. There are lots of different, for all these houses, there are lots of different questions you could ask. I went with what felt right. So, what deck do you use to explore grief? The 8th house is about others' resources and debt and taxes and sex and the occult and grief and death. And so, since we're talking about things for us personally, I wanted to focus on the grief. And I was really surprised by my answer, and that is the Tarot of the She. It's very interesting, right? I was not expecting this, and I wasn't sure. And I have, like, shadowy decks, so I was like, all right, cool. I'll just pick, it'd be something shadowy. And then really what it came down to is a couple of things. One, this is one of the decks that I have pulled before when I'm in a bad headspace and I'm trying to understand something. I'll pull just a card from this. And there's something about the wildness of it and the shadow of it. It's so deep, but it's not depressing, or at least it doesn't feel that way to me. It's rooted in the earth, which is extremely important to me, to be rooted in the earth, and it's something I'm really bad at and I'm working on. And then I now have a personal association with the Fae and grief, and that's I believe that when spirits move on from this realm, they go to other realms, and I believe that sometimes that's the Fae realm. And when I did my big Samhain ritual, which I think I talked about, I thought I talked about it, but I can't remember. Oh, I talked about it in my goddess work video, which isn't out yet. So I did a big Samhain ritual. Basically where I did like a self-birthing process for the babies I lost. And I believe I've had many meditations with where I get this image of my babies that are no longer with me dancing in a meadow with the Fae. So I believe that, and a friend told me this belief, and it resonated for me, that the spirits of specifically our lost babies go and live with the Fae and dance with them. And I really, even if it's not true, I love it, and it's comforting. And so with that association with this deck, and that those specific occurrences being the biggest way I've learned about grief, if I wanted to pull something for grief, I would reach for this, my Tarot of the She. House 9. What deck do you use to grow your spirituality / personal philosophy? Because the 9th house is the house of spirit and study. And so it's philosophy, it's religion, it's post-secondary education, it's the spiritual realm. Y'all know I had to pick it for something. And it had to be this. This is my Starseeker Tarot. And this was hard not to pick for other things. Oh my gosh. My own rules are pissing me off. But this deck it talks to me in a way my other decks just don't. I do not have any other deck that talks to me in the way this one does. And it feels spiritual. And like, I could have also, if I was going to pick this for anything else, it would have been for the next one, which is the 10th house of work, because I use this a lot for work. But my work is entirely spiritual based. I like to call what I do spiritual support services. Like, offering tarot readings feels like offering people spiritual support, right? And so I learned so much from this deck, and it constantly grows with me. Every time I start to think I'm not going to use this deck in this way anymore, I develop a new way to use it. And I use it also with my astrology readings, which also kind of falls under the 9th house. So it had to be this one. It just had to. And I love this deck so much. And there's my Judgment card. And this is a perfect example of why I picked this deck for spirituality, to grow my spirituality. Because that's exactly what's happened with my experiences. Using this for my year ahead spread is one of my biggest spiritual practices, and it has grown so much through having this deck. So it simply had to be the Starseeker Tarot. House 10 is all about your career and your life's work and your ambitions and actions and your public reputation. So what deck do you use to look at your life's work? This one is sort of theory. I have used this deck, but I've been trying to use this deck to read for myself in the ways that don't work for me to read for myself. And I'll do updates on an update video on how I read for myself, because that's gotten a lot better. But so the readings I've tried with this deck for this specific topic of my life's work have been a little difficult, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to turn it around. So that's my Bonfire Tarot, which, if you want to see the video of where Lisa made me buy this deck, you can check that out up in the cards and down in the description. And this was an easy choice because it's full of life and energy and fire. The fieriness is a huge factor because my life's work, my 10th house is Aries, which is where my sun is. It's where my Mercury is. It's also where my midheaven is. And the midheaven is a point that floats on the chart, that's a really fucking cool card. Which is what, it's how the world sees you as your most accomplished. So it's that public reputation. It's your life's work. These things are very tied and connected. So mine is very fiery. It lives in Aries, right? And it's right with my sun sign. So it's super connected to who I am as a person. And I can feel myself in this deck. So the Bonfire Tarot, and I love the name, Bone and Fire together. Yes. Thank you, Lisa. I love the deck. I'm still learning how to work with it, because it has such a unique voice, and it's definitely the busiest deck I have visually. So I'm still learning it, but it feels like my 10th house. It feels like my Aries. It feels like Mars. And so if I needed to ask something about my life's work, this is what I would want to pick up. Next up is House 11, which is all about community and groups of people and how you relate to groups of people. So friends and community and such. And so the question is, what deck do you use to examine community relations issues? This was another hard one because I haven't thought a lot about asking these kinds of questions. So I imagine this would be something like, if I wanted to look at what lessons is the experience of COVID and lockdown trying to teach to humanity, right? That's the type of question I would ask. That's an 11th house question. Or if I wanted to ask, what does my spiritual community need from me? That's the type of question. Or how can I work on growing my community relationships through my work? These are all the 11th house kinds of questions. And for that, I ended up choosing my Witch's Wisdom Tarot. And I chose it because of how fucking pagany it is. And this is hard to hold. I chose it because I don't like it on that side. There we go. there's a principle in Unitarian Universalism, which is the religious group I go to church with on Sunday. And they don't have doctrine. They have principles we try to live by individually. And one is like the inherent worth and dignity of all beings, the right to spiritual exploration, and that's different for each individual. And one of them is belief in the interdependent web of which we are all a part. And that's why I wanted to pick this one, because I believe in that we are all a part of an interdependent web. We are all on this earth and we are all connected together, and yet we are individuals. We are fully independent, and yet our independent choices affect and ripple out and change the world in minute and very large ways. The butterfly effect. There's all sorts of things in this area that categorize and classify this belief that I hold. And so if I'm looking at community, I want something that feels like a representation of the interdependent web we are a part of. I want it, again, to represent our earth. So the Brady Tarot could also work here. But it like, look, it's a human just being with the wild of nature without trying to impose its will over nature. And that's the community I want. That's the energy I want in my communities. I want something that brings that consideration to, I want that pagan voice in my community questions, because, like, look at this. Because I'm not just in community with people, I'm in community with the world, and that's how I want to be. And I don't know if I'm explaining this in a way that makes sense to anybody but me, but so this is what I want. I would want this kind of a voice to answer my questions about community relations. And all of that brings us to our final house, House 12, which is known as the House of Self-Undoing. It's not an easy place at all. No, no, no. And I had trouble figuring out this kind of how to word this question. What I came with is, what deck do you use for your mental health to dig deep into what is going on in your subconscious? Because some astrologers, my astrologer uses the 6th house is your physical health and the 12th house is your mental health. And that really rings true for me. And so, and the 12th house is hidden. It's called the House of Self-Undoing. So mental health is perfect for that. And the subconscious is perfect for that. So this is deep shadow work, baby. That's what this is. So what deck do you use for your mental health to dig deep into what is going on in your subconscious? And for me, that is my El Goliath Tarot. So this deck is fabulous. And it's pure shadow. Like, it's literally black and white. And I picked this because there have been times where when I wake up and I'm having a day where I just feel out of sorts, where I feel my mental health strongly, I pull a card from this deck and I read about it in the guidebook, and it helps me understand. Oh, that's the light. I thought light was literally, wow, good job. It helps me understand. It helps me gain perspective. It illuminates. It shows me things that I don't see on my own. It is very good at showing, it's very good at exposing what is hidden. It's a perfect shadow work deck. And so it's perfect. Oh, that's such a hard card for the 12th house. the 12th house of self-undoing. Like, look at that. So there you have it. Those are my 12 decks for 12 houses. I hope you enjoyed this. I thought this was hella fantastic. I'm so excited. I'm going to create a playlist for this, and I'll add any videos I find of people doing this tag. I have no clue if this is going to do well or take off, but I think it's really fun. And I hope some people do it. And I'd love to hear people, I'd love to hear responses to this. So if you do this video, let me know. You can send me an email. My email's in the description. You can, I don't know, let me know somehow, but I want to hear about it. You can find me on Instagram under my name, Kyra Getchell, and like send me a DM and let me know. I want to hear about it. So I hope you enjoyed this tarot astrology tag, and don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up to let me know if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that bell notification so you can come on back nice and easy and get all the notifications and, you know, that stuff. The description box has stuff I've already talked about. You know the drill. And this is where I'm going to leave you. I hope you liked this video as much as I did, and I will see you all later. Lots of love. Bye.